Catherine Harris last updated 0500, September 24, 2017. Auckland's urbanisation issues are not unique. A pageant-earner of an election campaign has gotten people pondering the big issues. And those are exactly the discussions Roger Dennis believes New Zealand needs to have if it's going to be ready to face the challenges ahead. Dennis, a Christchurch-based consultant, tries to avoid the phrase futurist, but the future is most definitely his focus. Futurist Roger Dennis' naive optimism won't help New Zealand position itself for what lies ahead. What I like to do is help organizations understand where the world's going, what it means for their industry or their sector, and what are the right strategic questions they should be asking themselves in order to be more proactive in a fast-changing world. Redmore government should look at benefits of sensors in buildings, says tech firm Trimble. Smart sensors to keep tabs on Christchurch happenings. NEC Smart City technology brings Australian government minister to Wellington's super city ambition. Stuck in a car park. Wellington's super city scrapped due to lack of public support. Dennis is speaking at the facilities Integrate conference this week, where he will be outlining his view of the future to property owners, planners and others. The Innovation Precinct parking building is just one of 4 parking buildings to be erected in Christchurch. Meanwhile, other cities worldwide are working to remove cars from their central cities. Of all the possible trends, he believes there are 4 which he believes will happen with a high degree of certainty: the rise of Asia and decline of the US, resource shortages, the continued growth of cities, and the onward march to digitalize everything. Globally, urbanization reached a tipping point a couple of years ago, so Auckland's infrastructure needs are not unique, he says. For necessities like transportation, roads, fresh water, sewage, electricity, typically scaling up those facilities and services falls well behind the demand curve as cities grow faster and faster. Countries that start to think into the future position themselves much better. I was in Oslo 3 weeks ago, and Oslo is actively planning to remove all cars from the center of the city in the next 3 years. Contrast that with the rebuild of Christchurch, where at least 4 parking buildings have been built in the rebuild. Another trend that was the use of data, even in the notoriously slow-moving construction sector. In the construction industry, the creation of data requires a different way of thinking around your assets to incorporate new practices into something that's been essentially unchanged for decades, Dennis said. Examples included the increasingly use of BIM or building information modeling, a system which collates information from all the players in a project before a hammer is touched. Another was the use of sensors to monitor a building's performance, such as water usage or seismic resilience. Houston GPS company Trimble had been quick to install sensors in its Christchurch building, enabling it to make quicker decisions about re-entry after an earthquake. That's one very clear example of how you can use data generated from sensors to create a commercial return on how you utilize an asset. Resource-wise, Dennis said New Zealand was starting to face its water issues, but there were big challenges facing its 2 biggest export earners, tourism and agriculture. If you look at things like vertical farming, for example, precision agriculture, protein replacements, I think these things could have quite significant impacts on agriculture and our exports. In low-margin tourism, there were problems in scaling up. We're a volume tourism destination, not a quality and price destination. And as soon as you start ramping up the numbers of tourists in New Zealand beyond what some growth protections would like, then the quality of the experience in those tourists starts to decrease. His advice to the incoming government: in a world where it's increasingly hard to understand where some of these trends might converge, you need to consider the words of Eisenhower, who famously said plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. Burying your head in the sand and adopting what Bill English has called a process of naive Kiwi optimism in response to turbulence will not position the country well. Stuff.